Well, yeah. Welcome here. Welcome back. Guys, below the gets. More breaking news for this season. My second breaking news. Uh, post, channel post or whatever the season here. Brian Daboll has officially been fired as the New York Football Giants head coach. No longer with the team. Nobody's surprised. If you're surprised, anybody that's here is watching this, if you're surprised now watching this that Brian Daboll has been fired, we just request that you raise your hands. Raise your hands, people. If you're surprised that Brian Daboll was fired. Oh, nope. No, is this thing on? Nobody? Okay, so nobody else was surprised that Brian Daboll was fired. Okay, we're through that. It's been a long 4 years with Brian Daboll. Started out on some good parts on that 2022 season. It was a great, or I say a good turnaround from the previous year, and it really did feel like there were some changes going to be happening as far as what the coaching was, previously with Joe Judge. And honestly speaking, I think there were some relatively good changes, definitely in the offense. Even though it took to this last year or so before we saw them. I remember saying at the beginning of the season here that we should at least be a 5 point or so better team, 5 to 7 point team better than the previous years, just with the changes at the quarterback position, and that's about on point there. I feel like it's about 5 or so points right now that we are better in this season compared to the 2020 season, and probably even more points compared to the ones before that, maybe like 7 to 8 points better than those. Scoring 18 points and 19 points a game and shit. But that's no longer here or there because Brian Daboll has been fired as head coach of the New York Giants. One more time out there. It's interesting. I don't think it is the finality of the moves that might be made with the organization, even though currently, as we have gotten, wind of, that Joe Schoen is currently being felt and or kept in some good outlets with the organization like that. I guess that'd be ownership like John Marin, John and Steve Tisch. I'm sorry, and then that he's going to be leading the search for the next head coach, which is not going to be this season. Head coach because they've already elevated Mike Kafka in that respect, and they're not going to go hire somebody else to then come replace Mike Kafka in the last 4 games. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm not trying to tell the future here. That's not what I do. I am not a psychic, I guess you say. Okay, I'm not trying to be a psychic, but that's just what I guess we can, as a fandom, can expect to take place and wait for it to happen because we have no control over these things. All we can do is watch these games and go to these games and give the Giants organization our funds when we feel like giving them our funds and whatever means that we do. And the team shows their appreciation of that by putting the product on the field they do. And if this is how they're going to take, our goodwill and faith in the team organization trying to do better things after these previous years, this is how we have to take it, man. All right, I'm not going to take it to heart. And you shouldn't take it to heart either. Because a lot of these things this team is going to spell out for themselves as they have been over the last several years. Okay, and that goes back to the 2022 season when Brian Daboll came in along with Joe Schoen, and they had that season they had with the current quarterback play of Daniel Jones and how they went into that next season, re-signing him, even though it was just a 2 year contract. In some sense, it was a 4 year contract, but it had a 2 year out in that sense. But that's how they played it up, and that's a GM thing. That's not a coach move decision. That is a general manager's decision to give that contract out and have whatever special notes in there like the outs. Now, do we give him credit for having that out? No, not really, because the quarterback play up until then had already been identified as something that was kind of iffy, sketchy, and we were just waiting to see what they were going to do to get around that, especially since they had managed to get through the 2022 season, relatively unscathed as far as themselves being here. but then they chose to double down on something that wasn't probably a good decision with the contract moves that they did, and that includes with Saquon Barkley eventually leaving because that was a great support for what they wanted to intend to keep with Daniel Jones. And we saw how that fell off once those type of areas of support left the team, and how they tried to replace them once again with the Devin Singletary, which is once again a general manager move. Yes, someone like Devin Singletary did previously played with Brian Daboll in Buffalo, but we understand that both Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll came from Buffalo. So even Joe Schoen had enough say okay to bring in the Devin Singletary, and I don't think that he heard that name and was like, oh no, we can't. No, he's probably Dutch down with it because it doesn't seem like Joe Schoen really has much direction of his own when it comes down to this stuff. Just like when we saw in Hard Knocks, and the trade things going on with New England, or whom else he might have allegedly been speaking to, or how he allegedly put out that the Bears were somewhat interested in Saquon, but that the Philadelphia Eagles were out. And then when it came down to it, the Bears were nowhere to be seen. The Houston Texans were nowhere to be seen. And Saquon Barkley was seen on the Philadelphia Eagles. So Joe Schoen doesn't really seem to have a great feel of what's going on amongst his cohorts and their plans as they combat amongst themselves in a general manager space of trying to improve their franchises. That's just one part. Okay. Now, this, of course, is probably speaking towards the fact that Brian Daboll is gone, that Joe Schoen is remaining here, because we know, at least here and around here, and maybe some more in this fandom or other fandoms in this, in general, just the fandom in general as a whole, because we're all speaking as a whole about this thing. There is very little separation, I feel like, no matter where you might go for a source of your Giants fandom, a separation that you will find amongst people when it comes to how they feel about the recent years of this team. Okay, they might have different opinions about who and what on the personnel as far as the Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, Shane Bowen, Mike Kafka, Carmen Brasillo, etc. All them players are, coaching staff, DB coaches that have switched out, and the linebacking coach has switched out. Different opinions about these guys, but the general consensus around the general New York Giants is that they suck mega dong. And it's true. They have sucked mega dong for a long time. Okay, and yeah, we just look at these 4 games that eventually got Brian Daboll fired in the right of it. Denver, the Saints, the Cowboys, and now losing here against this game here against the Chicago Bears. I didn't cut a post game thing after because what am I going to say that has already been said about this team when it comes to them in the fourth quarter collapse, right? Or the team played okay, came down in the fourth quarter, was up by 10, double-digit points, and we lost. What the fuck am I supposed to say about that? Other than what I've said about it before, about it sucking and the team not finishing games. And the team didn't finish a game again this past Sunday against the Bears. And that got Brian Daboll exited from the building. Rightfully so, pieces. I'm sure he will land on his feet somewhere. He is a good coach in areas, so he has OC positions that might open up, or QB coaching positions that might reopen up for him and opportunities. So he should be okay. That's peace. So goodwill to Brian Daboll there, right? Okay. Now remaining here of this team is Joe Schoen in that regard, because now he gets to go ahead and pick himself another head coach. Okay, when we've seen in previous other franchises what happens when they decide to get rid of head coaches and not get rid of those GMs at the same time, and if they get a new head coach and then things don't work out, and now you have a GM here that you probably have to keep for another year at least if you're trying to get his head coach time to develop his own staff and player want to whatever else, and how he's going to implement it with his coaching staff and scheme. So what are we supposed to say? So we've already checked in, as John Mara wants to seemingly tell us, along with Steve Tisch here. I'll mention Steve Tisch first, and then go John Mara just for the kindness. And Steve Tisch here wants to tell us, okay, they want to tell us that they want us to watch another 2 years of Joe Schoen putting together a roster that we're supposed to really enjoy to watch and respect their talent and stuff like that. Not to disrespect these talents, like I've said previously, so I'm not going to go over that. But him acquiring these talents at their times and the usage and stuff like that and the play we get out of them. And then actually, not only when they get here, it's not like these guys are always in the primes of their careers when we're talking about them. Sometimes their primes have been a little more behind, and we're trying to catch maybe a second swing on that with somebody like Darren Waller. who ended up retiring after the first season with us. Okay, so what type of talent or want to is Joe Schoen really identifying when he brings in these free agent talents or he trades for these players and stuff like that? Okay, we have Paulson the Daboll this year was an addition. Been okay at best for us in the secondary. The secondary as a whole has not been entirely good. Just okay-ish. Okay, and I have players that I like in the secondary, like a Tyler Nubin or a Cordell Flodd or Dane Belton or Deontay Banks. You know what I'm saying? Not favorites of their play, but we understand who's on this roster. It's not like we haven't been trying to pay attention to talents that have come in here and watch them do their things, man. But when the team comes away with so many fucking L's on the usual, okay, and when it comes away to every fucking season, we don't feel like we're getting much turnover from our free agent moves or our draft picks is a problem as well. One that's being ignored by Steve Tisch and ownership right now, as they just want to seem to lame up and expect us to lame up with them and watch this stuff again. And or at least expect us to show us this shit again and think we're gonna have a different attitude about it. Because if they lose, we're gonna have the same fucking attitude about it. So there's not gonna be many changes, just like amongst the fan base and how they feel about things going on with the organization, if the organization is not willing to and want to make the proper changes that it might need to make that stuff happen, man. They want us to go through and read these repeats. We'll go through the repeats with you, Joe Schoen. Okay. Well, do you know the repeats? There's nothing left in that regard as far as things he's going to scapegoat with. Okay. We can hear about coming out from the rumor mill, coming out from the Giants PR about how they feel about guys in the building like Joe Schoen and how they value his input, stuff like that. What is he really drafted? Please show us, Giants, what he has really drafted and highlight what he has really drafted from this team that we can talk about and highlight as, oh, when Joe Schoen got here, we got some of the best players ever. Some of the positions is filled like wide receiver with Malik Neighbors and quarterback with Jaxson Darts are positions that were sorely lacking, had big gaps in play before he got here. So for him to fill those positions is nothing. To make that first round pick of Malik Neighbors is really nothing to bring to a team that has very little in the offensive whole as a core. Okay, when the talent is already so much, but it needs an alpha type talent to really push it to the next level. That's only doing so much for us. Or the same thing with Jaxson Darts. He don't get no credit for Jaxson Darts when Brian Daboll was Richard the dude who probably picked him out more or less. And that is at a point where we have no fucking quarterback. So for you to finally pick a quarterback after 4 years and you laming up and re-signing a quarterback play that wasn't great and expecting us to sit through that while you were seemingly putting things together for when you eventually wanted to select your quarterback. And in those moves before then of the O-line, drafting a Joshua Ezedu or a Evan Neal or even a John Michael Smith right now, those are 3 primary picks that are early enough in those first 3 rounds, and they're not even on the field to play to be playing in such a way to say, oh man, yes, great, solid pick. As much as, no matter in regard of how much we desire to appreciate these guys' talent. Because having the desire to appreciate talents and then what we get on the fucking field is a total different thing. It's a total different thing. And this Giants franchise organization, to include Steve Tisch, don't want to recognize that or want to sit here and play the book games and save some money on the back end by not doing these moves. And only fears that we have here as the Giants and the fan base and the fandom is the eventual disheartening of our current veteran stars like a Dexter Lawrence or Andrew Thomas. Okay? 2 of the 3 players before they got here, of which they were the top, of the 3, there were 2 of those players that were the best on our team. And even 4 years going into 5 years of that, they are still arguably 2 of the 3 top players on our team. Even though we have Malik Neighbors who's only got 1 year under his belt now, respect the talent, and he is a premier talent and looks to be that in the future. First round pick. We shouldn't, okay, we only have 1 year of that. And Jaxson Darts we only have up to now. So now we have to sit here and wait next year and hope that in whatever sophomore slumps or whatever there are to be are, aren't like that or just are managed. Whatever new head coaching staff that comes in. I'm so tired of this fucking team, bro, because it's so hard to really talk about them and be positive about stuff all the time. Even when you try to be positive about it, you can't hold on to that shit but for a passing of a week, of a game. Until that next game come out and they fucking disappoint because they don't do stuff like winning multiple games in a row. 3-game win streaks, 4-game win streaks. We can't get those. Yet a lot of that is actually exactly on Brian Daboll, and that's why he is not in the building any longer. Just like when it comes down to some of the personnel moves are going to be the reasons why Joe Schoen will no longer be in the building. And even though they are talking as such, like he is going to be doing this search, he can do all the fucking searching that he wants right now. Or the Giants can allow him to do all the searching that they want right now. Because when these 7 games remaining, if a new coach comes in and is still getting some of the same type of play out of these talents, then what are we really saying, man? Not that there isn't any talent, is that there still needs to be further improved and developed. Okay, it's how many more picks, man? How many more picks and free agent moves we have to see and hear about, and their salary cap moves and everything else, and then here, and then coming off of Gettleman and salary cap issue. Yeah, okay, Shane, he managed the salary cap better. Okay, okay. Devin Singletary is not been the best returns. Darren Waller wasn't the best returns. And I fear that they might do with players on this veteran, like I was saying, like a Dexter Lawrence in the future, as we're not getting the best play out of him right now. And he isn't, and honestly speaking, I don't think he seems as motivated as he were in the past, but even though he's always been kind of a steady, calm guy, much like a Darius Slayton, where you don't hear him screaming and all that stuff. They don't do that. But with Dexter Lawrence right now, you can tell that his confidence in this team to play well is waning. It's waning. And that's probably why it was such a bad thing for him, in at least in those first 2 games, that Russell Wilson was a star. And I haven't even talked about Jaxson Darts had a concussion last game. And that was more than likely Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston will be out there and starting quarterback for this team. And here's another thing. We try to bring in Russell Wilson. Just think, we started the season with Russell Wilson. Okay, cool. Whatever. You brought in Russ. Jaxson Dart comes in. Why are we talking about all of a sudden trading Russell Wilson? So we brought him in. Okay, we gave him his contract for 2 games, 3 games. 1 game's an okay play, some stellar play, his career play for him, but still a loss. And then you trade him, and then you're going to trade him? Stop, man. That's why it don't make sense to hear that type of stuff. Sometimes I don't get it a lot of the time, because this team can't develop worth shit. It seems like the organization, whatever. Tim McDonald, other mayors in the building, not to mention John Mara, the other mayors in the building too. Can't seem to put together a good roster or franchise, because that's what's remaining, right? So do they not fire Joe Schoen just to shield themselves from more critiques? Because that's what's left. Once Joe Schoen is gone, you get another GM and you're bad again. This is already too long, man. Wow. Wow. And I haven't got out half of what I'm really digging about this day. I'm finding out. We find out, okay, Daboll fired. Oh, yeah. He's hoping to make it to the end of the season to kind of not rock boat too much, but yeah. But, was this Joe Schoen leading the next? No, Joe Schoen shouldn't be Joe Schoen. It should be just making sure that he is going through the files and doing the audit to make sure that all the fucking salary is correct and all them zeros and ones in their right place for whomever else is GMing on this team. For I'll say it like this, when the GMing is taking place for this team next year, that all them shits is in correct order. I don't need to be hearing about Joe Schoen is looking for the next head coach for this team. Okay, they better be a number 1 first round pick type head coach, because if they're a later round type head coach, there's no telling what we're going to get, because he doesn't seem to have the best eye for that stuff. His scouting team might have a better eye than him. He might be the guy that has the okay to say okay, because he is the guy that's in charge of the financing part of it. But I don't feel like his scouting eye for talent part of it is on par with that. With his salary is supposed to be bringing to us. I don't feel it's on that par with that. And that's speaking from the heart and for real right there. Like, I'm dead ass. And if anybody got a problem with that, let me the fuck know. Let me the fuck know if you feel like I'm reg off about that. Please. No disrespect, no type of bad energy about it either. It's just a serious discussion about it. Okay. I'm good, man. Peace. Y'all be good. Um, Go Giants.